Notre Dame fans, welcome back to another edition of the Beuerlein Breakdown. I am joined by Steve Beuerlein, former Notre Dame quarterback and 17-year NFL vet, Steve Beuerlein. And it's time, Steve. It's time to talk about Notre Dame versus Clemson. We've been talking about this. I think we've mentioned this matchup in every video that we've done, and the time is here. But before we move on to Clemson, which is the big game, let's just quickly recap what you saw from Notre Dame versus Georgia Tech, which was sort of that game that led into this big matchup with Clemson.
Yeah, right, Brian. I think the Georgia Tech game went pretty much as we expected it would go. We were a much better football team. We controlled that game from start to finish. We did start a little bit slow. Only scored 7 points in the first quarter and was tied up at 7-7. But we pulled away as the game went along, which is what you would expect a good team to do to an inferior opponent. We were able to run the ball effectively. Our defense did a great job shutting down and not giving Georgia Tech a chance to get anything going. So we kind of suffocated the life out of them that way. But I was really disappointed because we had talked about what I thought was going to be the key metric in going into this Clemson game was, can we build on the plays that we made in the passing game against a really good Pitt defense the week before. We couldn't run the ball against Pitt because they're a very good run defense. We committed to the run. We ran the ball 50 times for just over 100 yards, which was good to stick with the run game. But we really tried to make some plays up the field in the passing game, and we did against Pitt. Over 300 yards passing for Ian Book. I thought, and you and I discussed this, that we could still get better. The Ian Book had some things he could clean up. We needed to take another positive step against Georgia Tech. I didn't see it. I just didn't see any explosive plays in the passing game. You and I talked offline. Ian Book kind of went back to being the same old Ian Book that he has been all along, where he's just kind of taking the safe throws, not really being aggressive and taking any shots up the field, which I really felt should have been a priority against Georgia Tech going into this Clemson game. So I'm a little bit leery. I'm a little bit concerned that we didn't take that step offensively, and we'll see how that plays out for us against Clemson, because I really do believe that's something that has to happen if we want to win this big game against Clemson.
And you mentioned it right there, Steve. It's a big game against Clemson. It's number 1 Clemson against number 4 Notre Dame. A lot of the national punditry is going to talk about there's no Trevor Lawrence, there's no Tyler Davis, Mike Jones, James Skalski, players like that. So what I'll say is, so maybe they're not number 1 without those players. So it's number 4 Notre Dame against number 3 Clemson. This is a big game no matter what. Clemson is going to have a very, very, very talented team on the field on Saturday. This is an opportunity, Steve, for Notre Dame. This is an opportunity for Notre Dame to do something that they haven't done in a long time. What do you think is at stake for Notre Dame in this game on Saturday?
Well, everything's at stake. I mean, we haven't played what would be considered a real football team this year yet. None of the teams we've played to this point currently have a winning record. So it's our first real football game of the year. And as you said, I mean, whether you put Trevor Lawrence in there or Tyler Davis, some of the other guys are missing defensively, this is still a top 5 football team. And there's not a lot of drop-off between 1 and 2, even at the quarterback position. So this game is huge. There's a lot of different things we can say to build it up, and make it clear how big this game is. But for Notre Dame especially, it's been literally since 1993 was the last time that Notre Dame beat a top 5 football team. We have 1 win in the last 20 times we've played a top 20 or a top 5 football team. That says it all. It says we have not stepped up. Even though we've had a lot of success under Brian Kelly in building Notre Dame back, we've not had success against the top teams. And this is a chance to establish. Now, having said that, I do believe that there is a way that we can still get to where we want to get, even if we don't win this game against Clemson tomorrow. If we play well, show well, and have a chance to win the game at the end and come up a little bit short, that sets up the ACC championship game as a huge rematch. And that's really, if we had to choose one of the 2 games to win, that game, we've talked about it before, is more important to me. Win the second time as opposed to the first time. Now, of course, being greedy, we want to win both of them, but the odds of that, I think, are pretty slim. But the bottom line, any way you look at this is a huge game for Notre Dame, and they have to come out of this game with people really respecting Notre Dame as one of the top teams in the country.
I think your point is very good. If Notre Dame wants to make the college football playoff, they have to split with Clemson, and whichever game they lose has to be competitive. Whether that's losing a close game this weekend, and I do agree with you that if you look at just how to build a college football playoff resume, losing a close game on Saturday and then beating Clemson with Trevor Lawrence in the ACC title game a week before or day before they pick the college football playoff team certainly would be a much bigger statement victory for Notre Dame. But to your point, they have to split. I think for me, Steve, a successful season this year for Notre Dame, if we want to talk about Brian Kelly taking that next step, because he likes to talk about 33-6, it's 39-6 now. He likes to talk about Ian Book being 26-3. And I think Brian Kelly's done a great job getting Notre Dame to the point where we can have that conversation about record, but this is still Notre Dame. And it's 39-6 is great, 26-3 is great, but right now Ian Book's best win is over Syracuse. His next best win is over Northwestern and Navy. Brian Kelly, same thing. He hasn't beaten a team that finished in the top 10 since 2013 against Michigan State. And at the time of that game, Michigan State was unranked. We didn't know yet just how good that team was. So this is an opportunity for him to get that statement win and for Ian Book to get that statement win that maybe silences some of the conversation about it. And I think he needs a win over Clemson, and he either needs an Orange Bowl victory over an SEC team or a college football playoff victory. I think he needs those two things to say, hey, 11 years in, we're now year 4 post the makeover. This is the kind of steps you need to make as a program to say we're moving forward, not just stagnant where Notre Dame is beating the teams they're supposed to, but not truly one of the big boys in college football.
I agree. And you're not going to be taken seriously until that happens. And people that really study college football, they respect what Brian Kelly's done at Notre Dame. It's not easy to consistently win 10 games plus a year. It's just not. It's very difficult. I don't care who you're playing. And you can say the schedule's worked out the years that we've been undefeated or one loss. Okay, whatever. We've won the games we're supposed to win. The measuring stick, though, of being in that top tier category is winning big games. I mean, I talked a few minutes ago about how Notre Dame's only won one game since 1993 against a top 5 opponent. Alabama during that same time has won 20 games against top 5 teams. So if you're measuring, apples to apples, that's what that's the talk that we're, that's the game that we're talking about right there. Clemson's won a bunch of big games over the last 10 years under Dabo Swinney. LSU's won a bunch of big games over the years. Notre Dame has not made a statement in a big game in a very, very long time. And I agree with you. You can candy coat it all you want. It has to happen in order to be considered a top tier football team. And for Brian Kelly to be able to say, you know what? All right, you all can just shut up now. We've got that big win, the signature win. Now let's go win a championship.